Okay, guys, welcome to chapter 10. My dad's life story continues. This is week 18, 2025. And we are building on what already we have learnt and discovered amongst the revelations to do with my dad's life. And just to bring you up to speed, the story is more or less autobiographic, but retold from my account as a child growing up, and what it meant about my dad at that, his upbringing, his coming of age, his friends, his connections, and pretty much the brief life he lived. Last week in chapter 9, we paid particular attention to the changes that were happening post President Dr. Milton Obote, who is overthrown on the 25th of January 1971, and that sets in motion so many things that my dad finds himself in. Working at Mango Growers Cooperative Union, which was a huge conglomerate of, do you know what I mean by growers unions? This is when all the farmers channel their enterprise and their business to do with whatever they are growing into one organization. And cooperative unions had played a very, very key role in the independence struggle, although it is argued that Uganda didn't fight for its independence. It was granted independence following the Lancaster Agreement in London here. There were back-to-back meetings that were held, and at the dawn of 62, Buganda was granted independence. Then the next day, Uganda was officially also granted independence. Because you had two conflicting parliaments. You had the Buganda Parliament in Mengo, and then you had the main parliament at Parliamentary Avenue. So, and in that very year, 71, the remains of the Kabaka are returned. Jenaita Enjole, because the Kabaka had passed away here in London. He was here in exile after losing his kingdom. Like he said it, he lost his kingdom when the army under the command of Dr. Milton Obote / Idi Amin attack the Rubiri, and then the story is told that the Kabaka jumped over the perimeter wall and then finds his way to Burundi, and then from there he takes a flight to London here and seeks asylum. And then we have the First Republic of Uganda, which was the abrogation of the constitution. Then you had this, I called it a dossier, the charter, common man's charter. So many things in quick succession. And by 1969, my dad is completing his studies at the Bukalas Agricultural College, and then that launches him into the world, you could say, career as a chief financial auditor, chief financial principal auditor. There were 4 jobs in one. Chenabagamba, he must have been very, very good at what he was doing, and he was entrusted with the huge budgets that culminated into many successful ventures within the Mengo. Naye ebyaddirira later on, the culmination of something, you find your way that you are now much more in charge of where you want to be, what you're going to be. Remember, I told you this. My dad's background wasn't that privileged. He had grown up under the Church Missionary Society as a disadvantaged child. I can't teach the way to you. My grandmother and my grandfather Stebali bagagga. You're talking of 1947, 45, that's a long time, Things were different. But my dad had, I would say, something different about him. And although in the discussion I've emphasized the fact that he was a child born out of a situation. My grandmother was very young when she had my dad, and I think she kept that as a secret. And back in the day, such children would be taken up by orphanages. I mean, more or less, the church came in handy, and that's how my dad starts his early life. And it's going to shape his direction. Later on, when he started building churches, he built 3 churches. He gave large sums of money to buy land and to do, when it was like paying back or paying homage to his humble background. Chilaba. Now, where are we now? We talked about his friendship with the Kabaka. He had, I would say, an arm's length relationship, friendship, because it was all to do with the football. And how he was picked out, having scored a winning goal against the Kabaka's football team. Very interesting that drew his attention towards the king. And then he won a scholarship to Bukalasa. Although he had studied and achieved the accolade to study at Mengo Senior Secondary School, he was probably destined to go to Makerere University. But as it was, you call it luck would be, he ends up in the agricultural college, which would connect him with the cooperatives, which would connect him with a lot of people in those lines. Chengeno babulira mu 69, my dad's relationship with the Miss Uganda finalist would put him fast forward in navigating the stratosphere, the political stratosphere. The new elite vis-a-vis the Mengo Boys Club, because he had been a head boy. He had been a head prefect in Mengo Senior School. So his class of 1965 would be among the new elites who would feature predominantly in the 70s. Let's highlight this point, because we're going to come to it. In 1971, my dad is having a very stormy relationship with the most beautiful woman in Kampala. She was the center of attraction, and like I told you, there was a famous clash in Susanna nightclub with the minister, and consequently events thereafter and whatever was going on, his childhood friend Patrick Chiwanuka advises him to let go. Omukazi mwesonyiwe, omukazi wadde mwagalana. There's this euphoria of love that can sweep you. yes, you are in love with somebody or you are both in love with each other. Nay, for the wrong reasons, it can destroy you ultimately. That would bring in the picture my mom when a decision by my dad to go with my mom on a, I wouldn't say whirlwind getaway romance. It was a conference in Nairobi. Era yagenda ne mama wange. My mom was a young teenager. Now mutwala. My dad was around 23. So they check in the Fairmont Norfolk Hotel, very exclusive. It was a colonial hotel, you know. Katika mulaba Grand Imperial, it was a colonial enclave hotel. Later on it was changed to State House Hotel. A Grand Imperial jemulabao. Now wali Sheraton today. Walingawo hotel ne quarters zaba colonial officers. Ne babikonawo ne bazimba Dr. Apollo Mitono Obote Hotel eyo gye muyita Sheraton yali hotel Obote yagizimba. Kye mbagamba nti bwe tuyingira ebyaba communist, the philosophy or the ideology is to have grandiose things. Ebintu ebi, you know, you look up, that is Sheraton, you look up, this is the, you know, bintu bingi nnyo. Kira ne UCB gye mugamba nti no amini yagizimba ebyo bina byali by'Obote byali ku template the commercial banks na buli kimu, so many things like that. Are we there? Tuli bulungi. Kakati 71 October I'm conceived. My mom, I think her romantic affair, let me call it an affair, because it was on a holiday and things happen, isn't it? You know, you cannot be two people and in love and you don't expect to consummate each other. Mufuna bulungi. Hali 3 months later, while they are back in Uganda, my mom is pregnant now. Mufuna bulungi. 6 months later, in April, they get married. 2 months after the wedding, I'm born. So between 69, 70, 71, a lot happens in my dad's life. But at what cost? By then, my mom had already moved in. A Chebando. I told you there were 3 houses in one. So one of the main houses, the perimeter fence, very beautiful house. At that age, she's the wife. Now, yeah, let's go forward. Because in understanding whatever was going on, things look like they were, you know, perfect. The facade of something does not really show you what is behind it. Why did my dad make that decision to marry my mom? Was it an influence from within or was it an influence from outside? Because at that age, there was no pressure for my dad to settle down. He was having a good time. Mufuna bulungi. 23, 24. You are dating and committing yourself. By 25, you're getting married. Okay. Nze what I would speculate, let's carry on here. Until when you achieve so much so early, you want to see that you're staking out. Kati ngabo yali asomye koko, you would know. Mu economics, opportunity cost. He was in love with this woman, the Miss Uganda finalist. I've checked with her. Jali bambi achali mulamu naye akadiye. She's old. She's in her late twilight years. and anyumiza ebintu bingi nnyo. She's told me a lot, and she remembers a lot actually. Nti balina omukwano mulungi nnyo ne tata wange, gwali gw'amaanyi nnyo. It was that kind of friendship that they call a fatal attraction, that was meant not to be, but it was. Kiraba omukazi bwe basaze okwagala omusajja ne bwe bakyawagana basigaza omukwano. That's what I call friendship. Mufuna bulungi. Akati after the wedding, my mom begins her settled life as a wife, and she begins the hard responsibility of making home. Kati bino ebintu byemutamanyi, yes, this is not talked about. Okumanaging amaka, to manage a household in that capacity is a challenge. And at that age, I give credit to my mom. I was born, she was young, or she had begun a family very young. Never got by 22, 23, 24. Era amaze okuzaala. We were 4 of us. Mumpeyo omwana to date, generation zino eziriko ne baba aliko campus. Tebamalira ku 22, 23, 24 ng'ali maka afumba. Taliyo. But the relationship my dad had with my mom was a strong relationship. They were soulmates. The relationship my dad had with his ex-lover, Miss Uganda finalist, was an attraction. Was like, kubanga she attended the wedding. Something that put off my mom. Something that really upset my mom. Naye nga kyeyayingira, she was going into something that she knew was a poison chalice. You know, mukitagera kye ngamba gamba nti oba omusajja n'akyawa omukazi oyo, or you have this in mind that probably the man I'm getting married to will give up on his past. It never happened. What is going to happen now? It's gonna be something that would be haunting my mom. But at that age, it would be different if you are of a certain age and say, you have in mind that your husband has another woman. So we are 2 in 1. Tuchiri mbabiri. But at her age, I think she was playing on the fact that ajja mukyawa. Naye ku mbaga omukyala yajja n'asaavinga cake. Baali basala cake bamaze ogisala, but my mom didn't stay long standing after cutting the cake. Naddayo n'atuula. That's the story I'm told. Kati baddayo n'atuula. My dad asaavinga cake. They invited who is who. We were being served cake, and there were commiserations and everything. My dad's ex-lover ceremoniously goes to the high table and serves my mom. My mom looks down and they look at each other. Then my dad walks over and then they cross each other's paths, looking at each other. That kind of intrusion and that kind of in-your-face situation. Okay. So the wedding proceeds as it were. I told you there were 2 official ceremonies. There was the wedding at Silver Springs Hotel, And there was the wedding after, party wedding at Lugogo Indoor Stadium, filled to capacity. Ati 2 months later, I'm born. Banesunga nyo. And the fact that I was a boy was very assuring to my mom. Era from the very beginning, nachintekamu nti you're the heir to your dad, gwe musika wa Chanda. So I grew up with that sense of entitlement. So we are in the 70s now. My dad is giving up on working in the, I would say, the corporate world of the time. Even if you're 9 to 5 office, we're going to bring that business. Kwategana ne Uncle Patrick Chwanuka. By then, Uncle Patrick, I'm connecting to Avamuno. So it was about networking. The who is who. Oragenda kuyingira nani? Nagenda kuyingira ne City Council, Kampala City Council, nafuna tender contracts and all those kind of things. The Kasasiro boy's name begins in the 70s. Orayingira n'omupiira nga patron supporter, the patron of the supporters. Mufuna bulungi nnyo. Now, tuyingizeewo Exlava. Kakati, these are the things you learn at a certain age. The relationship my dad had with the Miss Uganda finalist in 1969 would launch him on the pedestal, would set him in the limelight of Kampala. Namanyika nnyo, my dad. And that is going to be very beneficial to my dad. Bw'atandika business. Mukitegeera bulungi nnyo. Kati tuyingira 70s tutandise. So my dad is living a settled life. He is married. Oh, he had a wedding of the year in 1972. Government ekyuka. Ava mu Mengo. Atandika business. Kubanga the question was always asked, Chanda yalina power ya amaanyi nnyo ne influence. Yalina abantu bangi nnyo b'amaanyi. People would ask. People would ask. Mufuna bulungi nnyo. But that is going to be behind the shadows of the Exlava. Are we there, people? So we are moving. We are moving. My mom returns to school. She begins to, because she had to finish her studies. Kati, when she reached a certain level, she finishes her studies in Kenya at the East African Civil Service College. Abatamanyi college eyo yali mu bya East African Community, which was formed in 1967. Kati Obote bw'atujja mu byaliwo ebya gundi presidential whatever system yaliwo after independence, n'aleeta bino ebya common man's charter ebyekikomunisiti. Ekintu ekyo kyali kyamaanyi nnyo nti Kenya n'ekijoininga ne Tanzania. Kati nga the idea is nti buli muntu anayingira mu system eya government alina okuba nga ayisemu Civil Service College. In fact, what I gather today, there is a Civil Service College in Uganda, and my OB, I have an OB there who's one of the top managers there. Kyembagamba nti zenna abantu bangi nnyo, uze bwe ngamba wano ali n'abantu eri Jinja, OB wange sijja mbabulira linnya. But that is all the remnants of the East African Civil Service College n'asoma. Baabasomesanga ebintu bingi nnyo, airline byani byonna, yasoma n'abantu bangi nnyo besijja babulya mannya. My mom mu 70s kati amaliriza asomye secretarial and administrative studies, yakubanga type na buli kimu. Kati the whole of the 70s my mom wasn't working. Kati agenda kuyingira service oba tuyite public service mu 80 era Mwami Roger Mukasa Coffee Marketing Board yakola ki, yamuwa katuyite tutya position, teyamuwa position, there were lots of jobs my mom could have done. Now we shall get to the 80s, tukyali mu 70s, so we're just laying the groundwork of how the connection my dad has with his ex-lover is going to kind of create a contradiction. The contradiction was that now, do I lose or do I gain? Nze mukulaba okwange, I think it was a formula my dad saw, mukita working formula. Kiyinza okuba nti ekintu kifu naye nga kikola. Ye nga kikola kitya nti you are both in it for the wrong reasons but you are both in it for the right reasons. Kiraba kubanga buli omu yali amanyi taata wange nga awo we batandikira. My mom wasn't known. My mom became known on the wedding day. Bwe bamanya maama wange era n'afuuka very very famous ng'omukyala omuto, mukyala wa Kyanda omuto, mukyala wa Kyanda avuga benzi, mukyala wa Kyanda omulungi. Kiraba ati let's touch base on 1971. Gono Obote bamugjeeko, Idi Amin ayingiddewo, adeclarinze Uganda the second republic, appointing a cabinet. Kati mu cabinet mwalimu mukono gya muzeeyi wange bangi nnyo, ne Henry Chemba, yaliko minister of health, naye yasooka n'amuwa ministry yasooka. Kati awo by the end of the year in government, by young elite batandika okulaba nti ekintu kigenda kukyuka. Where do things begin to change? I mean, declaring an economic war in 1972. Abagundi abawa emyezi 3, abayindi abawa emyezi 3, 3 months to leave the country. Naye from what I have gathered, he realized or he found out that there were British passport holders. N'abawa option to become Ugandans, which many of them did not want to do. That's why they made that decision. Ne Kenya byaliyo, ne Kenya yagoba abayindi, ne Tanzania. That's on record. Yes. Lwakuba kati nekya Uganda kyali sandwiched between what Amin would do eventually, the 7 years of his rule, obufuzi bwa Amin bwali bubi nnyo, because he came to power, I think, when the army mugita coup d'etat. A coup d'etat is something you do, and I think it should be interim for a brief period of time until you either you arrange it for elections, or you leave things the way they are. And pretty obvious, I mean, once he had the taste of power, and he declares himself president for life. These things moving money already. See, I'm repeating myself already. Kakati, olwo Obote akomyewo nati bweyamala go the conference, he received the communication that he's been overthrown while in Singapore. So he knew he has been overthrown. That's the statement that was proclaimed, that the army has made the decision, blah, 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 blah. That's it. Upon his return, he was hosted in Tanzania. Yeah, naaberayo ne Julius Nyerere. Tanzania mufuna bulungi nnyo, naga tuconnectinga ekintu kino dots, tulabe ekigenda okujja later on in the 70s. Kiraba n'ebyali bigenda mu maaso. Obote was arguing that he has to return to Uganda. Era eventually yakomawo, naye waaliwo ebyagenda mu maaso awo, kuba kati Obote yali acreatinze bakiyita comrade abantu abakirimu munda. So there was already a divide. Amagye we gajjirako Obote gaali disgruntled, naye ate it was an inside force which played against each other based on tribal lines. Kati Obote yali azannya akazannyo ng'akazanyidde ku tribal lines. Kubanga naye ate bw'ajja mu bufuzi ke kazannyo ate akamu a battle. Kakati tugende mu maaso. Kati olwo bamuzeeyi baffe bo bamaze okulaba nti ebintu bino, the way they are going, they are leading to self-destruction. In fact, most African governments post-independence struggled with coup d'etats. It was all over the place. But for business to thrive, you need that sense of security, that stability. Kakati, plans get underway. Kyatwala time. Kati olwo President Museveni bo we bafunira opportunity eyo. Okiraba, ye ali Tanzania, but prior to that yali akozeko mu office y'Obote. President's office. Era ne mu interim awo, from what I've gathered, naakolako ne mu State Research Bureau ey'Amini. Kati awo disappearing, n'addayo wa Tanzania, because he knew Tanzania very well. He had partaken in the Fonasa, and he was known to Nyerere. How? Kakati Museveni bamumme ekifo Makerere. Prior to that, from when it was so much information or under information based on how it is applicable, he had been raised in a DP background, the Byanyima family. Then he crossed over to UPC. Mbuti yali youth winger. Bino ebintu bya comradeship. Manyi ebintu bya 60s byali funny. You know, Obote yaleeta ekintu ekyo nga kigazi nnyo ekya Common Man's Charter. Common Man's Charter mugimanyi. That was meaning that Uganda was going to become a communist republic. Yayegenda kufuuka nsi y'aba communist. Yes. Now, in the 70s, when things begin tickering, by young elites, they really had to sit down and do their homework. You know, behind the background of all that was Tanzania. Ochiraba, it played host to the struggles. Kyentegeeza nti okujjako Idi Amin kwalina connection y'amaanyi ne Tanzania. Kiraba, kubanga from me what I remember mu 70s we tudduka back to back, tuli Kenya, tukomyewo, tusuze mu hotel for about a year. Kiraba, olwo bamuzeeyi baffe. Kati if I ask myself the question to date, what was it all about that was playing in the hands? Kubanga baali baana bato. In the 70s, my dad is in his late 20s. Baali bagaggawadde. Kati this window of opportunity that was there was to Jeko Idi Amin. Correct. Are we together? Kati we are in the 70s, tuyingira 70s, tugenda kubeera neki ne OAU summit Uganda 1975. Do you know what I mean by OAU? Organization of Africa Unity, headquarters Addis Ababa. That was a big statement on the world map, but it was toxic, that it was going to put Uganda in the firing line of the international politics. See, bino ebya PLO, Palestinian Liberation Organization, bino ebya Gaddafi, ebya Israel. Manyi n'Abayisiraeli baali Uganda. If you go back and read, there was a manifesto. There was a Nyaligenze about the name. I'll get the name. I'm going to remember the name. Of creating Israel. Before that, Uganda was one of the countries that had been earmarked after the First World War. Bw'osoma First World War politics, in the Second World War politics, Uganda is at cross paths. I have forgotten that goal. Omusajja yawandiika ebintu ebyo. Yes, yali muju Zionism, biri based on Zionism. Nga Uganda abaju oba biri na connection ne River Nile ne Bible. Kubanga River Nile eri mu Bible n'ebya Moses, whatever. Musome divinity. Nze nasoma divinity mwebiri ebintu ebyo. But anyway, byawanvuwa nnyo ebintu ebyo mu 70s. Nnyo. When I remember that book, I will tell you. But I don't have it on cue now. But I know it was written by someone. Where na Mungereza wano? I think so. And mukutegeera okwange nti after the Second World War in 1948, by creating the state of Israel. Yes. But there was a strong link of Uganda in that whole, I would call it a fracas of things. Kubyali bigenda maaso, I wish I could remember that. Mukasome mwandikasomye ne mubisangamu ebintu ebyo. But anyway, as things were going, kuba kati nze kababuli ekintu kiri kimu bwe kiti, okukola business in Uganda in the 70s kwayononeka ne kudda mu magendo, because to get the stronghold of a country you need to have the innings and comings of the economy. Kiraba kati you had a divide ti emwanyi coffee marketing board ejo mulaba eyo. Now I was telling you earlier, isn't it, had been formed to take care of that, but it was a cash cow. It was a cash cow, and that is going to come in 1981. Eyo cash cow ey'emwanyi coffee marketing board ne bagikwasa oyita Ojoko bamusasula okomyawo ani Obote. Yali ekintu ekimu kye bamuwanga ng'akasiimo. Can you imagine? Naye nga temwanyi bamuzeeyi baffe be baali bagisetinze in line the coffee boom of the 70s. Kiraba? So ebintu bino biwanvu nnyo. Mu 1976 kyekyaliwo e Uganda, the raid on Entebbe, ng'ebintu bitandise okuwanvuwa, ebintu by'Amin, things were really getting out of hand. So what happens, if you've watched the movie, you know what I'm talking about here. The raid at Entebbe. Sijui Palestine bawamba ennyonyi. Ebiseera ebyo byali biwanvu nnyo. Amin nga bawa right to land, balandinga e Uganda. Ne bahijackers n'abantu bahijacking ennyonyi. Tebyali biwanvu. And the outcome of that pretty much labeled Uganda a country of interest. Niezo ezentalo zibeera mu international politics na international relations. Bye nasoma mbimanyi bulungi nnyo, akaza nnyo. Naye kati Amin yagwa mu katiba, yakigwamu nga takimanyi. Kiraba bino ebyokugamba nti president for life, he was doing so many erratic things. Okay, even be exaggerated. In line of policy design and policy framework, you are on the global stage. You know. So what did Israel have to do? They had to rescue their people. They had to rescue. That was a daring rescue mission that has never been done again in international politics. Era nekitukulashingisa neki ne Kenya yawa safe passage okurefuelinga ennyonyi ezo, ne bajja Entebbe ne baataakinga blah blah blah, but they had played a trick. They had kept a line of negotiation in exchange. They had to release the hostages. These are people wanted their people to be released. 40 prisoners somewhere. I've been really mishmash. So kakati Amin ava ku kya Uganda, he was drawn out, he was distracted. Tetunaba kwogera ku byali bigenda mu maaso byala mu Uganda. Tugenda kuyogerako omupiira, eddiini, the religion at play in the 70s, the pressure from outside, which would end in Kagera. Abakombozi, mubajjukira abakombozi, Abatanzania, olutalo olujjako Idi Amin lwasetingibwa dda. Yagwa bugwe mu katiba, bagamba sijui omusirikale yatamiira, sijui there was a drunk soldier, then he was in a bar, then they fight over a woman, then that brings us into a clash with Tanzania. No, I don't buy that. That's gibberish. olutalo. Nzijukira meeting ezo nabagamba Lule, Yusuf Lule yalina musiraamu Yusuf. I think he was labeled a Catholic. Naye nga yali musiraamu. Yes. Professor Yusuf Lule. Binayisa Godfrey binayisa. Abo nabona bali mikono gya muzeeyi wange. Bawo mulala yali waawo Paulo Mwanga neighbor waffe yali mukwano gwa muzeeyi wange olwakomyewo okuva Paris yali nga ambassador. So my dad is getting his knees deep in the politics, but not in that way, but by the situations that were happening around him. And my dad never really had any time for politics. Frontline. Yali businessman. Kyentegeeza nti with the business you want influence. With business you want connections. But there's got to be a price you have to pay. Oshiraba. There's a price you have to pay. Well, politics is a very expensive game. Era nabona abakibeeramu babeerako bafinancier nabayita bafinancier. Kati nga bwe tugenda okutuuka mu bya 80s, mu 80s ffe twaluzinga ebintu bingi nnyo mu lutalo. Safe yabeeranga waka ewaffe. We had a safe. Nga economy sente zitambulira mu bantu sijui mu sokisi yona byonna. But what I remember, we had a farm nayo ne Lugenda, very nice farm. Maybe ne businesses. So we shall come to that side next week. Next week tugenda kuyingira in other lines. Tugenda kuyingira mu bintu ebirala ebyaliwo ebiseera ebyo. But now what we have seen today, we are seeing how what was happening around politically inside Uganda and outside Uganda was now shaping the direction. My dad, with all the connections he had in government, government gives you access to resources. Am I right? Sigamba resources ain't no corruption. No. Over embezzlement. No. Kati example, Mayor wa Kampala at the time, Olusimbi Mpanga. In the 70s, Kampala City Council was the cleanest city probably in East Africa. Yakwata tenda ey'ebimotoka ebisombe ebisaaniiko bibbini. Mukimanyi nti no byali bya Mercedes Benz. The dustbin trucks were Mercedes Benz trucks. Eyo tenda ani agirimu? Ani ali mu tenda eyo mumumbulire? Okiraba? So that means that they had to be push and pull. That's what I mean. Kati, my dad and his fellow young billionaires wouldn't have fallen short of staking out. This is the same thing that we shall discuss when we talk about the billionaire syndicate mu kapiira. Akapiira ke baakozesa okuvuga ekintu kyabwe. 23rd of December, is it 23rd? 24th? No, 23rd of November 1985. Cup final. Express versus KCC. Within 1 month, government yali ekyuse. But it was just the much anticipated battle between two giants. Olutalo lwali lwaggwa dda kati nga bayagala bayingizeewo a new beginning. That explains the entry of Museveni. NRA Bush War had ended in 1985 during the peace talks. Although, okay, Museveni wasn't giving up on what was his at the time. Kubanga remember Kampala yali divided. Yali mu UFM, Fedemu, Suji, Bakaira, Bankwanga, bani bonna. Nani yali aba financing. Kiraba kakati then they came to an agreement or a unison or something like that. So but that's the same thing that's going to happen in Moshi. That would bring Binaisa, would bring Rule, would bring the military commission. And surprise, President Yoweri Museveni yali kiri mu 19 yalina Minister of Defense. Kati kye neebuuza, I don't think Obote, later on Obote would realize that there is a fallout, because there is somewhere where Obote says that they've given Museveni everything, but he's still made the decision to go to the bush. Kati kitegeeza akalulu ka 1980 Paulo Muwanga bw'akazanya in favor of Obote, kyekyanyiza Museveni. Kyekyanyiza Museveni. Naye bigenda kubeera bibuuzo, era kyekimu ekituzza mu 1979. Kubanga if Idi Amin yali yagadde kufuga, economy yali tagirina. He had screwed up. He did not have the economy. Kyova yalwanisa nnyo amagendo, sente zaava mu system ne zidda mu underground system. That means you don't have taxes. Ekiraba economy ng'eshiftinze ke yagoba abayindi mu 72. Okay, different people might argue differently. Was it the best thing to do? Or was he under the influence? Who gave him that insight? It was a dream. That's what is told. I mean, he woke up one morning and said that they are sacking the economy. Literally. That's how I would understand it in the literal sense. Are we good? So that's how it is. Actually, we are exploring more in this story, 1970s, and we've also had the opportunity to talk. Actually, when my dad goes into business, let me give you this one quickly. He had made a lot of connections through his ex-lover. Kubanga the situation was like this. He made the conscious decision to marry my mom at the cost. Kubanga abantu bonna beewunya nnyo. My dad had done a lot of things for her. But from talking to her, they maintained their relationship vis-a-vis everything. They maintained their... Kati ekikwewunza kiri bwe kiti amawulire. Abantu bayagala nnyo mama wange. abantu bayagala nnyo maama wange, emikwano gya taata wange, and for the reasons we shall explore. Kubanga na information gyesitadde mu mboozi leero. Tuli good. Kali ka video kawanvu naye nga we are still continuing with the 70s, and let's enjoy the story. Are we good? Kale.